The knock came at 7 in the morning. Not a polite knock. Not the kind a neighbor makes when they need to borrow something. This was the kind of knock that makes your stomach drop before your feet even hit the floor. 3 hard pounds. Official. Cold. Like whoever was on the other side already owned the place. I was 58 years old, standing in my mother's kitchen in my robe, and I had no idea my entire life was about to be turned upside down. I looked through the peephole. 2 men in dark jackets. One holding a clipboard, the other holding a legal folder, thick, bound, rubber banded shut, the kind of thing you don't just print at home. Behind them, parked at the curb, was a black sedan with government plates. No logo on the side. No markings at all. Just that flat, official black that means someone with authority has decided to show up at your door. I opened the door. "Are you Sandra Elaine Pruitt?" the taller one asked. His voice was flat. Professional. "I am," I said. "We're here on behalf of the County Property Records Division. We've received a formal petition regarding the ownership status of this property." He held out a card. "We'll need to come in." I stepped back and let them through. My hands were steady, but my heart was hammering, because I already had a pretty good idea who had sent them. My brother Dennis had been threatening to do this for 2 years. Let me back up. You need to understand who Dennis is before any of this makes sense. Dennis is 62, the oldest. He's always acted like the rules were written for him, and everyone else just lived inside them. Growing up, he could talk his way out of anything. He knew exactly what to say to make you feel like the problem was you, not him. Our mother, Ruth, 79 years old, bad knees, good heart. She never quite saw through it. She loved him the way you love someone who reminds you of yourself when you were young. You overlook things. Our father passed 11 years ago. He left the house to our mother outright, with a handwritten note tucked into the will that said the home was to stay in the family and that any decisions about its future were hers and hers alone. He underlined the word hers. Twice. Simple. Clear. Or so I thought. What none of us knew was that Dennis had spent the last 18 months quietly building a case. His argument. Our mother had dementia. That she was incompetent to manage her finances. That the house, worth around $340,000, needed to be placed under a conservatorship. His conservatorship. Him controlling the asset. Him deciding when to sell. Our mother does not have dementia. She's forgetful the way anyone pushing 80 is forgetful. She misplaces her glasses. Asks the same question twice sometimes. But she knows her name. She knows her children. She knows exactly what she owns. She told me once, "Sandra, the day I can't make my own decisions is the day I'll tell somebody. And it won't be Dennis." I had been living with her for 3 years, moved in after my divorce, stayed because she needed help and I needed somewhere quiet. Dennis had visited 4 times in those 3 years. 4 times. And now he wanted to come in and take over. The 2 men settled at the kitchen table. The taller one introduced himself as Mr. Holt. He slid a document across the table. "We've received a petition from a Dennis Ray Pruitt claiming your mother lacks the mental capacity to manage her affairs. He's requesting a temporary hold on property transactions pending a formal competency review." I looked at the document. Dennis's signature, neat and deliberate, at the bottom. Medical-sounding language in tidy paragraphs, cognitive decline, diminished capacity, inability to execute informed consent. The kind of language that sounds like concern but smells like money. "My mother is cognitively fine," I said. "That's for the review process to determine. We'll need to speak with her directly. Is she available?" "She's asleep." "It's 7 in the morning. We can wait." I kept my voice even. "Did anyone verify the medical claims in this petition before you drove out here?" A small pause. The petition included documentation from a licensed physician, a Dr. Warren Felch. I nodded slowly, kept my face neutral, because the name Dr. Warren Felch meant nothing to me. And it should have. I was my mother's emergency contact. I drove her to every single appointment. No doctor by that name had ever come up. Not once. Something was off. I stepped into the hallway and texted my friend Gloria, a medical records coordinator at the county hospital. Kept it simple. Can you look up a Dr. Warren Felch? License, specialty, current practice, anything you can find. Then I went back to the table and sat down and waited, keeping my hands still and my face neutral. Dennis arrived at 9:15. He didn't knock. He used the key he'd had since our father died, the one our mother had never asked back because asking would have meant a conversation she didn't want to have. He walked in like he owned the place already. Navy blazer, pressed slacks, hair neat. He looked like a man who had gotten a good night's sleep because he had nothing on his conscience, or because he'd learned a long time ago to make peace with what he did. Sandra. He nodded at me like I was furniture, then turned to the investigators. Gentlemen, thank you for coming. I trust you've begun the review. Still in preliminary stages, Mr. Holt said. Of course. Dennis set his briefcase on the counter. Relaxed. Comfortable. A man who believed he had already won. My mother's condition has been deteriorating for some time. I have documentation from her physician. Affidavits from family members. I just want to protect her interests. Whose family members? I asked. He looked at me with that particular patience that isn't patience at all. People who've observed her. This isn't personal. It's extremely personal, Dennis. You're trying to take her house. I'm trying to protect it. He smiled. There's a difference. That's when my mother walked in. Ruth and Pruitt, 79 years old, gray hair pinned back neat, housecoat and her good slippers. The ones she saves for company. The ones with the little embroidered roses on the toe. She'd heard voices and come down the hall to investigate. She stood in the doorway for a moment and looked around the room slowly, the way she always does, taking stock, measuring, deciding. Took in the strangers. Took in the legal folder still open on her kitchen table. Took in Dennis in his blazer. Took in me. Dennis, she said. What are you doing in my kitchen at this hour? She sat at the head of her own table and folded her hands. What would you like to know? She asked the investigators. What followed was 40 minutes of the sharpest conversation you've ever seen. She gave them the address, the year the house was purchased, the name on the deed, the bank that held the original mortgage, paid off in full in 2003. Social security number from memory. Her doctor's name, the date of her last checkup, her blood pressure reading. Not one hesitation. Not one wrong detail. Dennis's smile got tighter and tighter the longer she talked. My phone buzzed. Gloria. No active medical license in this state for a Warren Felch. Found one in Louisiana. Expired 2019. Surrendered under investigation for fraudulent documentation. I sat back down at the table. Can I see the physician documentation? I asked Mr. Holt. The evaluation from Dr. Felch. Dennis pulled a folder from his briefcase and slid it across like a man laying down a winning hand. Mr. Holt opened it. I watched his face. Subtle, just a tightening around the eyes. He turned to the second page. The third. Leaned over and said something quietly to the other investigator, who took out his phone and started typing. Mr. Pruitt, Mr. Holt said. This evaluation is dated 8 months ago. That's correct, Dennis said. It references a cognitive assessment tool that wasn't released for clinical use until 4 months ago. The room went completely still. There must be a dating error, Dennis said. There's also the matter that Dr. Warren Felch does not hold an active medical license in this state. We run a standard verification on all physician documentation, routine procedure. He set the folder down. And the notary seal on your petition was issued by a notary whose commission expired 14 months ago. Dennis said nothing. His jaw was tight. His eyes moved to me, quick, sharp, like he was looking for the leak, and then away. You could see it happening in real time. The math changing. The plan that had seemed airtight now full of holes he hadn't noticed before because he'd been too focused on what he was going to do once he won. My mother looked at him from across her own kitchen table. She didn't say a word, just looked at him the way a mother looks at a child who has disappointed her past the point of surprise, past anger, even. The way you look at something you've known was coming for a long time. The second investigator stepped into the hallway. I caught pieces. County assessor, fraud referral, initiate review. Dennis straightened his jacket. I was acting in good faith. If there are errors, I was misled by the people I hired. That will be part of the review, Mr. Holt said.
He paused.
Mr. Pruitt, I'm going to ask you not to leave the area. We'll be in contact. Dennis walked out the same way he came in, but his footsteps were different. Faster. Like a man trying to outrun something already right behind him. My mother poured herself a coffee, sat back at her own table, looked at me and said quietly, I always knew it would be him. 22 days later, they came back. Not here. To Dennis's house. My cousin Patrice lived 2 streets over from him. She called me when the black sedan pulled up, 2 cars this time. The men who got out were not from property records. Dennis had submitted forged medical documentation, used a physician with a surrendered license, falsified dates on a legal evaluation, filed fraudulent paperwork with a county government office to seize control of a competent adult's property. That is elder financial fraud. In this state, that is a felony. Patrice said he didn't say a word when they walked him out. Just went to the car quietly, the way people do when they finally understand that the thing they thought couldn't touch them has been right behind them the whole time. My mother heard about it that afternoon. She was watching her program. I told her carefully, like I was handing her something fragile. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I hope he gets whatever he needs to set himself right. That's Ruth. Even now, the house is still hers. Her name on the deed. I still live here. Still make the coffee. Still drive her to Dr. Owen's every 6 weeks. Some nights I sit on the porch and think about that morning. The knock. The dark jackets. Dennis standing in my mother's kitchen in his pressed blazer, so certain that he had built something airtight. So certain that no one had thought to look closely. So certain that the woman sitting at the head of that table was already beaten. The thing that undid him wasn't anything I did. I didn't make calls. I didn't file anything. I didn't argue or plead or cause a scene. It was a date on a forged document, a medical assessment tool that hadn't existed yet at the time it was supposedly used, a doctor's license that had been surrendered under investigation years ago in another state. All that planning, all that patience, all that careful, methodical construction, and it came apart on a routine verification call that investigators make on every single petition. Every one. Standard procedure. He was so sure he was the smartest person in a room. He forgot that sometimes the room is bigger than you think.